Welcome to But Frankly Pierce News. I'm Arthur Fairview. Let's take a little trip, shall we? Somewhere between Maryland and Virginia lies Washington, the District of Columbia, our nation's capital. This is the seat of power, the cradle of democracy, the very bastion of liberty.
Where is he going with this?
Maybe we should stop and ask for directions.
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
There seems to be as much polarization in DC as there is in the rest of the country right now. While the Democrats are trying to move major legislation forward, Republicans are actively working to undermine our democracy. Last week, they employed their weapon of choice, the filibuster, to kill legislation that would prevent the government from shutting down and raise the debt ceiling to cover the cost of the existing expenditures, most of which came from the previous administration.
So business as usual.
Unfortunately.
They speak very fast and very loud, and nobody listens to anybody else, with the result that nothing ever gets done.
After the Democrats redrafted the bill, they were able to get the votes to prevent the government shutdown and get it to President Biden's desk at the 11th hour.
That was too close.
Now the Republicans are refusing to participate in crafting a largely popular bill, the hallmark legislation of President Biden's agenda, the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill.
Once again, nothing new.
In fact, it seems to once again be
The bill is wildly popular among most Americans. Poll data shows it in black and white.
and sometimes in color.
Good one.
The Invest in America and Data for Progress survey shows 61% of all respondents supported the bill. Hart Research showed 73% of voters supporting the bill.
But it isn't just Republicans holding up traffic, is it?
Moderate Democrats Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are a large part of the problem here.
Part?
Okay, they are the problem. Neither of them seem too interested in the larger of the two infrastructure bills. The issue is that they got bipartisan support on a smaller bill for roads and bridges, along with some major benefits for the fossil fuel industry. But let's back up a minute for context. Back in June, President Biden met with a bipartisan group of senators to come to consensus on the infrastructure bill. After passing the American Rescue Plan with no Republican support, President Biden, a former senator, wanted a bipartisan bill for infrastructure.
We had a really good meeting, and to answer your direct question, we have a deal.
Or so they thought. The arrangement was for a bipartisan bill to move along with a larger bill that would pass through the budget reconciliation process.
Republicans and this group did not want to go along with any of my family plan issues, the child care tax credits, the human infrastructure that I talk about. And that we'll see what happens in a reconciliation bill in the budget process. If we get some compromise there, and if we can't, see if I can attract all the Democrats to a position that is there. But they're gonna move in a dual track, and that's all I say. But I want to thank each and every one of them. It's been, a lot of us go back a long way where we're used to doing one thing, give each other our word, and that's the end. Nobody questions it. They have my word. I'll stick with what they proposed, and they've given me their word as well. So where I come from, that's good enough for me.
But the Republicans refused to do anything with this. And Democratic Senators Manchin and Sinema, who were both part of the initial deal with President Biden, are gumming up the works.
So much for giving your word.
The actions of Senators Manchin and Sinema make no sense, as their constituents are very much on board with the bill, even after learning about the price tag. According to data, 59% of West Virginia Democrats support the legislation.
Those are Manchin's people.
And 85% of Democratic voters, as well as 55% of unaffiliated voters in Arizona, support the bill.
Well, clearly that is Sinema's constituency. So what is the problem with these two?
If we knew that, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But back in March of 2021, the American Rescue Plan passed via the reconciliation process with only Democratic votes, while Republicans were focused on ungendered potato head kin and the estate of Dr. Seuss ceasing publications of certain books. However, it didn't stop Republicans from taking credit for the bill anyway, a point that Democrats cleverly drove home.
It's as if they know they need it, but are unwilling to do anything that might advance a Democratic agenda item.
On the nosy.
You got a lot of nerve. Let's say you are my friend.
Take what you can, give nothing back.
Many headlines are focused on internal Democratic struggles as a result of the current situation. In order to get the smaller infrastructure bill to pass the House, the Progressive Caucus wants it to pass in tandem with the larger infrastructure bill, and they are willing to wait. Twice now, the House has refused to vote on the smaller bipartisan bill until the Senate passes the larger Build Back Better bill. Yes, we're looking at you, Senators Sinema and Manchin.
Aren't there any Republicans willing to take a chance on a bill so popular among all the voters?
Ha!
David Rothkopf, a political scientist and foreign relations expert, tweeted, "Are the Dems the only one in disarray when they are crafting specific programs while the GOP offers up cynical tweets and obstruction? The only GOP items are voter suppression and defending the worst president in history, and when they have the power, pushing tax cuts for the rich."
Beg the Congress's pardon.
Next, to use a sports analogy, it is usually an advantage for the home team when a contest is played.
Never hurts to have the home crowd with you.
But not always.
Right you are. A New York arbitrator ruled Monday that failed former President Donald Trump's non-disclosure agreement with his ex-White House aide, Omarosa Newman, is unenforceable. Trump's campaign had filed an arbitration complaint against Newman with the American Arbitration Association in New York City in 2018, alleging that she was in breach of a 2016 confidentiality agreement. The action was related to claims Newman made in her 2018 book, Unhinged, an insider's account of Trump White House, in which she called Trump a racist and suggested that he was in severe mental decline.
Well, if the shoe fits,
Uncomfortable and smelly.
The arbitrator, T. Andrew Brown, said the agreement effectively imposes on Ms. Newman an obligation to never say anything remotely critical of Mr. Trump, his family, or his family's members' businesses for the rest of her life. Newman and her attorney released statements celebrating the decision Tuesday. "Clearly, I am very happy with this ruling," Newman said. "Donald has used this type of litigation to intimidate, harass, and bully for years. Finally, the bully has met his match."
You rotten over them nipple!
The ruling states that Trump's campaign will now have to pay Miss Newman's legal fees. On Saturday, the 2021 Women's March was held. Thousands of protesters marched at rallies in Washington, D.C. and across the nation decrying the Texas abortion ban law and warning that the Supreme Court's conservative majority could impose further restrictions in the coming months. Massing in downtown DC before walking in a clamorous procession to the Supreme Court, a roster of speakers spoke of the looming threat to Roe versus Wade and implored Americans to enlist a nationwide campaign to preserve women's abortion rights.
certainly looks like bigger attendance than the Justice for J6 rally.
It certainly does.
The information by Frankly Pierce News obtained specifically stated that the following items were not allowed at the Women's March DC: weapons,
I can see that.
illegal drugs,
Reasonable.
coat hanger imagery,
Understandable.
and costumes from the Handmaid's Tale series.
Seriously?
Yeah.
One of the many notable speakers at the rally was Alexis McGill Johnson, the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood.
These are the consequences of 1 month of one ban in one state. But this year alone, we have seen nearly 600 restrictions introduced in 47 states. So no matter where you live, no matter where you are, this fight is at your doorstep right now. This moment is dark. It is dark, but that is why we are here. Movements exist because of darkness. and it is our job to imagine the light even when we can't see it. It is our job. It is our job to turn pain into purpose, to turn pain into promise, and to turn pain into power. The power to determine what happens to our bodies, what happens to our lives and our futures for every woman, every trans man, every non-binary person, anyone who may ever need an abortion. We own it. It is ours.
The timing on Women's March DC was perfect, as the Supreme Court just reconvened on Monday, October 4th. The signature cases are conservatives' wet dream: gun rights and abortion, as Mississippi seeks to end Roe versus Wade.
We will then crush the rebellion with one swift stroke.
This has been But Frankly Pierce News. Thanks for watching. I'm Arthur Fairview. Hang on, it's starting again. There's no shelter from the wind. Hang on, like a fire from the sky. Winds of change are blowing by.
And